Dear students, welcome to RSET Online. This lecture will cover the first part of the Module 1 of the subject MEG 201 Mechanics of Solids. In this lecture, we will first see an introduction to the subject Mechanics of Solids. Next, we will discuss the deformation behavior of elastic solids in equilibrium. Then we will study the method of sections to explain stress as the resisting force acting per unit area. Then we will also see the stress vectors acting on Cartesian coordinates. After that, you will also be introduced to this concept of stress at a point and stress tensor. Next, we will see the equality of cross shears. Then we will study the Cauchy's equations, which can be used to find the normal and shear stress components acting on any arbitrary plane. In simple terms, mechanics of solids is the study of solid objects subjected to stress and strain. It is also known by the names mechanics of materials or strength of materials. The subject basically studies the behavior of solid materials under the action of forces, temperature changes, or any other external or internal agents. The subject mechanics of solids basically involves analytical methods for determining the strength, deformation characteristics, and stability of the various load carrying members used for various engineering applications. For example, let us consider the case of a pressure vessel. A pressure vessel is a container designed to hold gases or liquids at very high pressure. Thus, the walls of a pressure vessel must be of adequate strength in order to withstand the internal pressure of the fluid contained by it. Similarly, if you consider a building, its floors must be sufficiently strong for their intended purpose. Next, for a machine component, there will be so many shafts, and these shafts used in the machine must be of adequate size. That is, they should have suitable diameter and length in order to carry the torque to which they are subjected. And if you take the case of an aeroplane, its wings, they should have, or they should be able to safely withstand the aerodynamic loads that may come upon it during takeoff, flight, and landing. Now, the component parts of all these structures we discussed so far are designed using the analytical methods of the subject mechanics of solids. Thus, the subject mechanics of solids has remarkably many applications across all branches of engineering profession like mechanical, civil, automobile, aerospace, etc. Now we will discuss the deformation behavior of elastic solids in equilibrium. When an external force acts on a body, the body tends to undergo some deformation. If the external force is removed and the body comes back to its original shape and size, which means the deformation disappears completely, the body is known as an elastic body. This property of the body, by virtue of which certain materials return back to their original position after the removal of the external force, is called elasticity. The body will regain its previous shape and size only when the deformation caused by the external force is within a certain limit. Thus, there is a limiting value of force up to which the deformation completely disappears on the removal of the force. The value of stress corresponding to this limiting force is known as the elastic limit of the material. If the external force is so large that the stress exceeds the elastic limit, the material loses to some extent its property of elasticity. If now the force is removed, the material will not return to its original shape and size, and there will be a residual deformation or permanent deformation in the material. Now we will discuss equilibrium of a deformable body. The external loads that are acting on a body can be divided into two categories: surface forces and body forces. We will discuss these forces one by one. The first one is surface forces. These are caused by the direct contact of one body with the surface of another. In all cases, these forces are distributed over the area of contact between the bodies. If this area is small in comparison with the total surface area of the body, then the surface force can be idealized as a single concentrated force, which is applied to a point on the body. For example, the force of the ground on the wheels of a bicycle can be considered as a concentrated force. If the surface loading is applied along a narrow strip of area, the loading can be idealized as a linear distributed load. Here, the loading is measured as having an intensity of force per length along the strip and is represented graphically by a series of arrows along the line. The resultant force of the linear distributed load is equivalent to the area under the distributed loading curve, and this resultant acts through the centroid C or geometric center of this area. A typical example for a linear distributed load is the loading along the length of a beam, where this idealization is often applied. The next type of external load is body forces. A body force is developed when one body exerts a force on another body without direct physical contact between the bodies. So there need not be a direct physical contact between the two bodies under consideration. Examples of body forces include the effects caused by the Earth's gravitation or its electromagnetic field. Although body forces affect each of the particles composing the body, these forces are normally represented by a single concentrated force acting on the body. In the case of gravitation, this force is called the weight of the body, and the weight acts through the body's center of gravity. Another external load is support reactions. The surface forces that develop at the supports or points of contact between the bodies are called support reactions. Now we will see the equations of equilibrium for a body. Equilibrium of a body requires both a balance of forces and a balance of moments. A balance of forces is required to prevent the body from translating or having accelerated motion along a straight or curved path, and a balance of moments is needed to prevent the body from rotating. These conditions can be expressed mathematically by two vector equations, namely summation F equal to 0 and summation MO equal to 0. Here, summation F represents the sum of all the forces acting on the body, and summation MO is the sum of the moments of all the forces about any point O, either on or off the body. Now, if an XYZ coordinate system is established with the origin at point O, the force and moment vectors can be resolved into components along each coordinate axis, and the above two equations can be written in scalar form as 6 equations, namely summation Fx equal to 0, summation Fy equal to 0, summation Fz equal to 0, and summation Mx equal to 0, summation My equal to 0, and summation Mz equal to 0. Often in engineering practice, the loading on a body can be represented as a system of coplanar forces. If this is the case and the forces lie in the xy plane, then the conditions for equilibrium of the body can be specified with only three scalar equilibrium equations, namely summation fx equal to 0, summation fy equal to 0 and summation mz equal to 0. Now we will study the method of sections. This method can be used to explain stress as a resisting force acting per unit area. One of the main problems of mechanics of solids is the investigation of the internal resistance of a body, that is, the nature of forces set up within a body to balance the effect of the externally applied forces. For this purpose, a uniform method of approach is employed. A complete diagrammatic sketch of the member to be investigated is prepared, on which all of the external forces acting on a body are shown at their respective points of application. Such a sketch is called a free body diagram. Now, the first sketch shows the free body diagram of a body which is in equilibrium under the action of the forces P1, P2, P3 and P4. Next, to determine the internal forces caused by these external forces, the body is cut by an arbitrary section plane ABCD. As a result, the body is completely separated into two parts as shown in the second diagram. This process is referred to as method of sections. Then, if the body as a whole is in equilibrium, any part of it must also be in equilibrium. For such parts of the body, however, some forces necessary to maintain equilibrium must act at the cut section. These considerations lead to the conclusion that the externally applied forces to one side of an arbitrary cut must be balanced by the internal forces developed at the cut, or briefly, the external forces are balanced by the internal forces. Thus, in the second diagram, we can see the internal forces S1, S2 and S3 which act on the cut surfaces to keep the two parts in equilibrium. Now, in the diagram, what you see is one of the two parts of the cut body, and the cut surface is divided into infinitesimal area. In general, the internal forces acting on infinitesimal areas of a cut are of varying magnitudes and direction. These internal forces are vectorial in nature and they maintain the externally applied forces in equilibrium. In mechanics of solids, it is particularly significant to determine the intensity of these forces on the various portions of a section as resistance to deformation. In general, they vary from point to point and are inclined with respect to the plane of the section. It is advantageous to resolve these intensities perpendicular and parallel to the section investigated. As an example, the components of a force vector delta P acting on an area delta A are shown in figure. An enlarged view of the cut surface is shown at the right hand side of the diagram. The components of delta P along x, y and z directions are delta Px, delta Py and delta Pz respectively. In this diagram, the section through the body is perpendicular to the x-axis. Also, the direction of delta Px and the direction of normal to delta A coincide. Since the components of intensity of force per unit area, which is called as stress, hold true only at a point, the mathematical definition of stress can be written as given below. For the force component delta Px acting on the area delta A, the corresponding stress can be written as tau xx equal to limit delta A tends to 0 delta px by delta A. For the first component delta py acting on the area delta A, the corresponding stress can be written as tau xy equal to limit delta A tends to 0 delta py by delta A. And for the first component delta pz acting on the area delta A, the corresponding stress can be written as tau xz equal to limit delta A tends to 0 delta pz by delta A. The first subscript of tau in all the above expressions indicates the plane on which the stress is acting, and the second subscript designates the direction of the stress component. The intensity of force perpendicular to the section is called normal stress. It is customary to refer to normal stresses that cause tension on the surface of a section as tensile stresses. On the other hand, the normal stresses that are pushing against the section are compressive stresses. The normal stress is usually designated by sigma. Now, the components of the intensity of force acting parallel to the section are called shear stresses, which are represented by tau. Thus, in the above expressions, tau xy and tau xz are shear stress components, whereas tau xx is a normal stress component, and hence it will be usually represented by sigma x. Now we will see stress vectors in Cartesian coordinates. Consider a body referred to the Cartesian or rectangular coordinate system xyz. Let the body be cut by a plane parallel to the yz plane. The normal to the yz plane will be parallel to the x-axis, and hence the yz plane is also known by the name x-plane. Now let Tx be the resultant stress vector or the resultant traction at point P. Then the stress components on this plane can be written as sigma x, tau xy and tau xz. Similarly, let the object be cut by a plane parallel to the xz plane, which is also known as y plane, and also the object is cut by a plane parallel to the xy plane, which is also known as z plane. Now, the stress components acting on the y plane and the z plane can be written as sigma y, tau yx, tau yz on the y plane, and sigma z, tau zx, tau zy on the z plane. So these stress components acting on the three planes, namely x, y and z planes, are called the stress vectors in Cartesian coordinates. The 9 Cartesian stress vectors acting on the x, y and z planes can be shown acting on a small rectangular element surrounding the point P. So in the diagram, sigma x, tau xy and tau xz are the stress components acting on the x plane. Here sigma x is the normal stress component, and tau xy and tau xz are the shear stress components. Similarly, sigma y is the normal stress component acting on the y plane, whereas tau yx and tau yz are the shear stress components. And sigma z is the normal stress component on the z plane, and tau zy and tau zx are the shear stress components. Now we will study the concept of stress at a point. We know that stress is a vector quantity and a stress vector can be characterized by the plane on which it is acting. If you consider a body, through any point within the body, we can imagine infinite number of planes, and hence there will be infinite number of stress vectors acting at the point. The totality of all stress vectors acting on every possible plane passing through a point is defined to be the state of stress at that point. The next topic is stress tensor. The state of stress at a point, which can be defined by three components on each of the three mutually perpendicular planes, in mathematical terminology is called a tensor. There will be three normal stress components, namely sigma x, sigma y and sigma z, and six shear stress components, namely tau xy, tau yx, tau yz, tau zy, tau zx and tau xz. Thus, the matrix representation of the stress tensor is tau ij equal to, in the first row we have the elements sigma x, tau xy and tau xz. In the second row, tau yx, sigma y and tau yz, and elements in the third row are tau zx, tau zy and sigma z. Now we will see the stress tensor for plane stress condition. A material is said to be under plane stress condition if the stress vector is 0 across a particular plane. The concept of plane stress condition is generally applicable to very thin flat plates. Now, if the stress vector across the z plane is assumed to be 0, then for such a plane stress condition, the stress tensor reduces to the form tau ij equal to, in the first row we have sigma x, tau xy, and in the second row tau yx and sigma y. Thus, for a plane stress condition, we can see that the stress tensor reduces to a matrix of order 2 by 2. Now, we will see the concept of equality of cross shears. Consider an infinitesimal element subjected to pure shear as shown in the figure. Here, on the x planes, the shear stress components are tau xy, and on the y planes, the shear stress components are tau yx. Now, these shear stress components are known as cross shears. For this element to be in equilibrium, these cross shears should be equal. By considering an infinitesimal element ABCD and taking moment about the point C, it can be shown that tau xy equal to tau yx. In a similar way, it can also be shown that the cross shears tau yz is equal to tau zy, and the cross shears tau zx and tau xz are also equal. Now, considering the equality of cross shears, the stress tensor discussed earlier can be modified. Here, it can be seen that the first element in the second row is replaced by tau xy, which was originally tau yx, because the cross shears tau xy and tau yx are equal. Similarly, the first element in the third row is replaced by tau xz. It was originally tau zx in the previous case. The reason is that tau xz and tau zx, these cross shears are equal. And the second element in the third row, which was originally tau zy, is replaced by tau yz. Here, the cross shears tau yz and tau zy are equal. A similar change can also be seen for the plane stress condition also. Tau yx is replaced by tau xy in the first element of the second row. Now we will see Cauchy's equation, which can be used to find out the stress components on any arbitrary plane passing through a point. Consider a point P within a body. We can imagine three mutually perpendicular planes passing through this point, and we shall write the stress components acting on each of these planes. There will be a normal stress and two shear stress components on each of these planes. Now, knowing these 9 stress components, we can determine the stress components acting on any plane passing through that point. The equations used for this purpose is known as Cauchy's equation. Let the three mutually perpendicular planes passing through the point be the x, y and z planes. So in the diagram, we can see the point P, which is contained by the x, y and z planes, and the arbitrary plane is ABC. The arbitrary plane ABC has its outward drawn normal n, whose direction cosines are nx, ny and nz. The direction cosine means the cosine of the angle between the direction of the normal and the considered axis. For example, nx is the cosine of the angle between the normal n and the x-axis. Similarly, ny and nz represents the cosines of the angles between the normal with the y and z axis respectively. Let Tn be the resultant stress vector on the arbitrary plane ABC. Now this resultant stress vector Tn can be resolved along the x, y and z axis, and these components are Tnx, Tny and Tnz. On the three faces, the rectangular stress components are sigma x, tau xy, tau xz, sigma y, tau yz, tau yx, sigma z, tau zx and tau zy. For equilibrium of the tetrahedron PABC, the sum of the forces in x, y and z directions must vanish individually. Considering the equilibrium in x, y and z directions separately, we get the following equations. Tnx equal to nx sigma x plus ny tau yx plus nz tau zx. Tny equal to nx tau xy plus ny sigma y plus nz tau zy. Tnz equal to nx tau xz plus ny tau yz plus nz sigma z. The above set of equations are known as Cauchy's equation. Given the state of stress at a point and the direction cosines of an arbitrary plane, we can find out the stress components acting on that plane. The Cauchy's equation can be written in the matrix form as shown. On the left hand side, we have a column matrix containing the components of the resultant stress acting on the arbitrary plane, which are Tnx, Tny and Tnz. And on the right hand side, we have the product of the state of stress at the point and the direction cosines of the normal to the arbitrary plane. Once we have the values of Tnx, Tny and Tnz, then the resultant stress Tn acting on the arbitrary plane can be found using the relation Tn square equal to Tnx square plus Tny square plus Tnz square. Let sigma n be the component of the resultant stress Tn perpendicular to the plane and tau n be the component of resultant stress Tn parallel to the plane. Here sigma n will be a normal stress and tau n will be a shear stress. Then sigma n can be expressed as nx into Tnx plus ny into Tny plus nz into Tnz, and Tn square is equal to sigma n square plus tau n square. Now we will see the application of Cauchy's equation in order to solve a numerical problem. In this problem, the state of stress at a point is given in a matrix form. From the matrix, we can identify the normal stress components as sigma x equal to 50 kilopascal, sigma y equal to 20 kilopascal, and sigma z equal to 30 kilopascal. The shear stress components are tau xy equal to minus 20 kilopascal, tau xz equal to 40 kilopascal, and tau yz equal to 10 kilopascal. And we are asked to determine the normal and shear stress components on an arbitrary plane whose normal has the direction cosines 1 by root 2, 1 by 2, and 1 by 2. Here the direction cosines nx, ny, and nz are 1 by root 2, 1 by 2, and 1 by 2 respectively. In the question, the stress tensor is given in the form of a matrix of order 3 by 3, and we can arrange the direction cosines in the form of a column matrix. Now substituting the given values in the Cauchy's equation, we get the components of the resultant stress on the arbitrary plane as Tnx equal to 45.36 kilopascal, Tny equal to 0.858 kilopascal, and Tnz equal to 48.28 kilopascal. Knowing the values of Tnx, Tny, and Tnz, we can find the resultant stress component Tn using the equation Tn square equal to Tnx square plus Tny square plus Tnz square. Substituting the values of Tnx, Tny, and Tnz in this equation, you will be getting the resultant stress Tn as 65.25 kilopascal. Now the normal stress component sigma n on the arbitrary plane is given by the equation sigma n equal to nx Tnx plus ny Tny plus nz Tnz. Substituting the given values, we will be getting the normal stress component sigma n as 56.64 kilopascal. Now the shear stress component tau n on the arbitrary plane is given by the equation Tn square is equal to sigma n square plus tau n square. Substituting in the equation, we get the shear stress component tau n is equal to 32.4 kilopascal, and that completes the solution to the problem. The final answers are the normal stress component on the arbitrary plane sigma n equal to 56.64 kilopascal, and the shear stress component tau n on the arbitrary plane is equal to 32.4 kilopascal. So this is the end of this lecture. In this lecture, at first we have discussed the deformation behavior of elastic solids in equilibrium. Then we have seen the method of sections to define stress as a resisting force per unit area. Then we have seen the stress vectors on Cartesian coordinates, and we have discussed this concept of stress at a point and stress tensor. We have seen equality of cross shears, and finally we discussed Cauchy's equations in order to find out the resultant stress components acting on an arbitrary plane. Thank you for listening to the lecture.